Well, there you have it. South Africa are heading into the World Cup semi-final. They have beaten the French at home. The first time France have lost at home with an actual crowd here in over 4 years. Scotland were the only other team to do it over the last 4 years. That was during COVID when this place was empty, and that was an utterly sensational match once again. And I'm going to get into a lot of different things in the video. Make sure you leave a comment down below what you made of it, what you made of the Springbok performance, what you made of the French performance as well. And make sure you like the video and make sure you subscribe to the channel. But I want to start off with the quality of this match and the quality of the match we saw last night. I don't know if there has been a time where the same stadium has held 2 test matches in back-to-back days that have both been of that sort of quality. This was absolutely brilliant, and Ireland-New Zealand last night was absolutely brilliant as well. 2 games which were quite different in a lot of ways, but still 2 brilliant matches. And it was one of my overriding feelings actually watching this game, just thinking the difference in quality between the quarterfinals we've seen here and the quarterfinals we've seen in Marseille. And it's not to say the ones in Marseille weren't exciting and interesting in their own right, but just in terms of the quality of rugby on display here in Paris, I think it was a completely different level. And that's why I think, and this isn't a controversial point, I think many of you will probably agree with this, I don't think South Africa and New Zealand have just booked themselves a spot in the semi-final. I think they've most likely got themselves a place in the final, because their performance could even drop off a little bit based upon what we've seen from Argentina and England, and they will still get through those games next week. But there'll be plenty of time for us to preview those. This video is all about the box. And do you know what's so impressive about this victory here? Is if you think about that first 40 minutes, South Africa had very little of the ball in French territory, and they actually had to go chasing the game. And I was thinking, particularly when France scored early and when they scored 2 tries relatively quickly, I think it was within the first 12 minutes that they scored their first 2 tries, and I thought, I don't know if this South Africa team, if they get themselves behind, are best placed to go and chase a game. And that's what they had to do to a degree, and they were able to do it brilliantly. It's another type of game that they've proven they're able to get through. But not just that, in the first half, when they did get themselves back into it, it wasn't the traditional maul and kicking to the corner, it was their attacking game. Some of those tries were sensational, and that, I think, is a testament to the way in which they've developed their game over the last 4 years, something that those of you, particularly Springbok fans that have watched videos on this channel about the box, know that I've spoken about before. They wanted to develop their attack. They wanted to move to a more expansive game plan. I think we saw the benefits of that on the biggest stage here tonight to get back into that game at 19-all. What else to say, really? I had a few different notes that I wanted to get through. I suppose one thing as well is a testament to Jacques Nienaber and Rassie Erasmus and the way in which they set this team up. There was a lot of discussion about the 5-3 split on the bench, and 4 minutes into the second half, when they changed the halfbacks, I thought, oh, that could be early. And then 2 minutes later, they changed Siya Kolisi. Now, on Siya Kolisi, I wonder whether that is still having to manage his workload after he's come back from an ACL injury, because we saw similar against Ireland. I don't think he came off quite that early against Ireland. I could be wrong, but we saw him come off early in that game. And I remember thinking, given the leadership that he has in that team, that's a huge risk. And I thought the same again here. So I presume that they're maybe managing his minutes. We'll wait and see. And I don't know if they've spoken about that in more detail. If they have, then drop a comment down below. So Kolisi came off and they changed the halfbacks. And I was looking at the game at that point, and I think they were still 3 points down. And I thought, do you know what? Faf de Klerk and Pollard coming on, this might work really well for South Africa. They weren't behind by such a score that wouldn't suit that different style of game plan, and I think it worked really well. With Faf coming on, with Pollard coming on, Pollard actually got away with it a little bit, didn't he? I don't know if you saw at the end, when France had that scrum in their own 22, they broke over to the right-hand side. It was Pollard that stepped in to allow the gap on the right and France to break through. In the end, it didn't come back to bite him, but I think they got those substitutions right. I think they got their bench right as well. One other player, though, to keep an eye on is Bongi Mbonambi, who, again, I thought was absolutely brilliant. Not sure he always gets on the best side of the referee when he becomes captain. He's such a competitor, he's so passionate, that I think it sometimes rubs refs up the wrong way. Regardless of that, though, he looked like he was a little bit walking wounded at the end of that game. And in this competition, if the Boks are going to go all the way and if they're going to retain the World Cup, I should say, then they need him fit and firing, particularly after we saw with Malcolm Marx. So that's something which might be a very slight cause of concern for the Boks. But overall, a sensational performance at the Stade de France from the Springboks. I look forward to reading your comments and what you made of it, and they are still on to retain it, and I think we're going to see an All Blacks Springboks World Cup final. Arguably the biggest rivalry in the sport going head to head at the Stade de France. And do you know what's the other really interesting thing about this weekend? Looking at Ireland going out, looking at France going out, that whole talk of 4-year cycles, is it nonsense? Does it actually build anything? It's about peaking at the World Cup, isn't it? I think that's what we've seen from the Boks and from New Zealand. We could play those two games next weekend and we might end up getting different results, but it's about on the day, in the biggest competitions and with the pressure on the line, being able to perform. And yeah, I thought the Springboks did really well for a variety of different reasons in this game. The other thing that I'll mention very quickly, the French crowd here, which you can see is kind of emptying out relatively quickly, you can't really blame them, were booing Angus Gardner, the referee, and his officials as they walked off the pitch, and it does seem at the moment like there's a huge amount of focus on the officials and them getting decisions right or wrong. I thought today, and I thought Wayne Barnes yesterday as well, in terms of the officiating on the whole, were brilliant. There's probably a few more controversial bits today. I know France were unhappy about a knock-on at one point that they thought wasn't given, but I thought generally speaking the officiating for these biggest games has been really, really good, and people might completely disagree with me there, but that's just been my reading on the situation, listening to the ref mic as I'm watching the game in stadium. So what do you reckon, Springbok fans? What do you make of the performance? What do you make of your team? What do you make of the fitness of Siya Kolisi, of Bongi and Mbonambi? And what do you make of the way Rassie Erasmus and Jacques Nienaber have orchestrated that victory? I think it is a performance and a result 4 years in the making. If you look at where their game was after the 2019 World Cup, where their game was on that Lions tour, to where they developed it to now, that was why they were developing it. Nights like tonight, playing the host nation France in the Stade de France, that's why they developed it, to be able to have a game plan that can adapt to the situation. I think that's the impressive thing. I should mention France very briefly. I don't think anyone can watch the last two nights, and as brilliant as the All Blacks were, as brilliant as the Springboks were, not at least feel for Ireland and for France. A host nation, the best French team we've seen for a long, long time, and they fall out in the quarterfinals again, being on that really tough side of the draw. You've got to feel for them. You've got to feel for all of the fans and the expectation. We've all been there as sports fans before, haven't we, where you think your team's going to do it and then they fall short. For me, it was 2015 with England, perhaps naively. I thought at a home World Cup, they had a good record at Twickenham. Maybe they'd be able to do something special, and they utterly bombed out in the pool stages. This isn't quite that. This is the French team that have bombed out against the reigning world champions and a fantastic team. But even so, they'll be absolutely gutted. And I probably need to give it some more thought about where that game got away from France. They were leading, 6-0 up around 66 minutes. And in fact, it was that 3 or 4 minutes that was absolutely key. 66 minutes, Etzebeth goes over, the try's converted, a 1-point lead. 2 minutes after that, Pollard knocks over a penalty. That 10-point swing in about 3 or 4 minutes changed this game for the Springboks, and it was about having the players in position for when those opportunities arose for them to be able to take them. So those are my kind of general thoughts on the game. Give me yours down below, drop it in the comment section, make sure you like the video, and make sure you get subscribed as well. We're down to the final 4 at the World Cup. There'll be a lot of content coming your way on the channel. Look forward to reading your comments, and I'll see you in the next one.